Welcome back. I'm Shannyn Moore. This is More Up North. And I'm glad you T-vote this. Just kidding. You're going to wish you did. Questions for our panel. Tom Begich. If Lisa is at 34% and 10% get tossed, does Lisa drop after voter error and legal challenges to 31.6 or 24? Wonky.
Yeah, I get that. What the question is asking, is it 10% of the total votes cast, or is it 10% of her vote that might be thrown out? And
historically speaking.
Historically speaking. It's actually, at times, in the historical record, been both. The thing we do know is that the CNN poll, 7% of the total people surveyed said that they'd probably mess up the ballot. 7% said they'd probably mess up the ballot. So that would be the first question, dropping it down to 24%. I believe it's going to be closer to the second question, and that the number is going to be closer to between 10 and 12% probably of her actual number. So it's going to be drop her down. If she were at 34, which I don't think she will be on Election Day, it would drop that number down to 30 if that were the case, or 31. My guess is she's probably going to be a touch lower than that, and it will drop it a touch lower. But she will not have a full 10% of the total ballots cast. It'll be 10% or slightly more probably of her own ballots. And by the way, as of 5 o'clock today, there were 56 new writing candidates who'd filed. 56.
That's right. Yeah. And you know, we're not even covering how crazy that story is, because it's changing every 3 hours of what the Department of Elections is doing. But you know what? They should resign. Go on vacation now. Y'all will just do better. For Bill Walker, how do you and Sean Parnell see the world differently on Alaska's energy issues? Well, he sees it from...
usually in the 25 debates that I showed up for that he didn't show up for, you'd have 25 seconds or 30 seconds to answer the question. We just look at it differently from the standpoint. I think it's time that Alaska determines our own destiny, rather than sitting back waiting for the phone to ring, waiting for a multinational corporation or a group of them to say what's best for Alaska. They're never going to say what's best for Alaska. That's not their job. I don't fault them. That's not their job. Our job is to take control of our future, and sitting back and sort of letting the process work, no. It's time we go dig a ditch, put in a piece of pipe, dig a little longer ditch, put another piece of pipe, and get on with it. Get on with our future for our state.
But you make it sound so hard like that. You know, oh, wait, dig a ditch, put in a pipe?
You know,
what, do you got to go to Yale for that?
Well, it's just a philosophical difference that we need to step up and take care of Alaska, put Alaska first, and I don't have any patience to wait for somebody else to determine what's best for Alaska. I just don't. And that's the philosophy that he's adopted. I think it's wrong. I think it's the same model we've had for way too long, and it's time that we say, you know what, those 30 years didn't quite work for us. Let's change the model, let's change the approach, let's step up, be Alaskans again, and go to work.
Well,
it's always easier for these people. It's always easier for these people to do nothing and talk about what they'll do than actually do something and have to stand on the record of what that looks like.
Right.
Well, it's sort of a philosophy of nobody gets hurt. The trouble is we are getting hurt by nobody moving.
You're right.
Because we're running out of oil. I mean, we're 2/3 empty, and when you lose suction on that pipeline in the North Slope, 90% of our income, it goes away. So sitting back.
So there goes the permanent fund.
Well,
up comes taxes.
Education. There goes. I mean, you name it. Pick a favorite project. Take 90% away.
A tanning bed in the governor's mansion.
There you go.
Tanning bed.
There you go. So.
Yeah. Here's a question for Tang. Do you have any ideas for my Joe Miller Halloween costume? I have handcuffs and lockpicks.
You know, actually, somebody asked me that question earlier today, and okay, I'm gonna tell you what I told him. He said. This was a kid, and he said he wanted to go dressed as Joe Miller. So I told him, just lie.
I got to answer. You know, Halloween's my birthday, and Scott asked me what I was dressing as, and I said, Scott, I'm not going to dress as my fears. I'm going to go as my values.
That's awesome. And happy birthday. A couple questions for you. When voting yesterday, I asked for the write-in list, told it was not available. But the official told me just spell her name as best you can and be sure to fill in the oval. Was this too much info?
Yep. Should not have been done. And if that person actually asked the question and got that answer, that election judge broke at least appears to have broken the law by saying the name. Now, if it was yesterday, it depends on what time yesterday it was.
See?
Because the temporary restraining order was in effect until the Supreme Court stayed it. They didn't reverse it. They stayed it until oral arguments, which are occurring, or which will occur on Friday. I think the show will be broadcast after that, so we'll actually know the outcome. But the Supreme Court was clear about one thing. If you asked for information, or two things. If you were asked for information, your ballot needs to be marked and segregated because it may be an invalid ballot, number one. And number two, they had to remove the party affiliation on that list because that party affiliation was an absolutely was campaigning no matter what. So,
Right.
You know, why did the rules change after 55 years for one person? I am mystified by that. I am, as an American and as an Alaskan, I am deeply offended by it as well.
Well, I think, you know, voting is a tremendous value in this state. Women had the right to vote here before women in America did. Native Alaskans had the right to vote before American natives did. This is something that we value. This is a right.
Right to vote?
Yeah, the right to vote here in Alaska. So I look at this and I'm like, to sort of trounce on this, this is a really, I mean, this is the sacrament of democracy, is when you get to go vote.
Well, we have to renew, African Americans have to renew it every 25 years. You know that, right? They have the right to vote. Did you know that? Yeah. Did you know that?
No.
You didn't know that?
What? Look at me, Tank. My skin is see-through.
No, but he knew it.
Really? Tell me
Every
this again.
25 years, they have to renew the law for African Americans to vote.
What it is the Civil Rights Act, which governs in reapportionment we have to deal with it. Alaska is the only state outside of the Deep South that is under the jurisdiction of the Civil Rights Act because we had a pattern of discrimination against minorities up here. In the South, that pattern is related to African Americans, and then in some cities in the North, it's also related to African Americans. The state has to constantly petition to get out of the United States if they ever want to be removed from that jurisdictional review that takes place. Alaska continues to stay under that. We are still under the jurisdiction of the Civil Rights Act. How many years since 1965? You know?
See, you didn't know your friend was having all those problems, did you?
I didn't know you were black. I don't see color, Tank.
Yeah. That's
You're full of
right there.
surprises.
That was a good one right there.
Tom Begich, how important is voter turnout to this election? It's important in every election.
It's always important. You know, somebody asked me the question, this actually goes real quickly on Lisa saying, you know, not everyone showed up to vote, so that's why I felt it necessary to run my write-in. You know what? People can choose to vote in America or they can choose to not vote in America. It's a choice. We're not compelled to vote. I like people to choose to vote, but I don't begrudge them their right to not vote and make their decision that way. What I do want to see is a turnout that's probably somewhere in the 55% range. That would be healthy for an off-presidential year election.
I want everybody to vote.
But ideally, everyone would vote.
Right.
And in this election, the more people who vote, the more likely that those voters are going to represent different opinions on the extremes as well as the center. Less informed voters do vote when that happens. But I think that's good for democracy. I don't think it's bad for democracy. So, will it make a difference? I don't know.
Right, voter suppression, I'm not really
No, I don't
that
believe in
into.
it at all.
No. I mean, it's like taking a poll. If you take a poll, a statewide poll of 50 people, that poll will have a plus or minus error of hundreds. But if you take a poll of 500 or 1,000, so the more people that show up, the more representative that's going to be of the voters' wishes. So I hope it's a great turnout.
I do as well. Tank, what? No pistachios?
Hey, I gave them all away last time I was on your show.
I know you did. That's
I know
great.
who wrote that, too.
Maybe you can answer this one, Bill. Do you think Murkowski's Ted Stevens endorsement ad helped her?
You know, I don't know. You know, we were faced with a similar situation because Governor Hickel introduced me and was a very big part of our campaign, a very big part of my reason for running in the first place. And he passed away halfway through the campaign. So we were faced with a situation. We sat down with the Hickel family and said, "It's your call. We will respect your wishes if we continue on," because we had made some commercials with Governor Hickel and myself prior to his passing away. And so, I just don't know. And I got some pushback. Actually, I recall in Fairbanks at the state fair, one person said they were offended that we were continuing to run a ad, even though we added on the bottom. It said this ad is being run with the permission of the Hickle family, or the insistence, actually, as it was. But you know, I just don't know. It's hard to tell if that's a you know, how that plays out. I just don't know. I mean, I think that everybody's going to look at it differently, and I think she had the ability to do it during the primary. She chose not to, as I understand the facts, and so she chose to afterwards. So we didn't have that situation. We either did or we didn't. So.
Right, and that's what he was endorsing her for, was the primary.
Right.
Yeah, I think I got a flyer this week, more than the ads that, of course, he was there for, you know, participated in. I got a flyer that said, "What would Ted Stevens do?" Like what would Jesus do? You know, sort of question. I thought, really? You know, well, he would have endorsed the party candidate like he always did. Ask Arliss and Wally how that went down. You know, I mean, who knows? Joe Miller, I think he would have choked on. He might have just choked him. Tom, can you speak about the most recent senatorial poll?
Well, there's a couple of them out there.
Yeah.
You know, there's two.
Can you just talk about the trend for
Sure.
a couple of seconds on it?
Yeah, the polls, there were a poll released this morning, which was by Ann Hayes Research, which is a local polling firm for the IBEW, showed a pretty significant trend from October 6th to now, about 13 points up for Scott McAdams. It showed about a 3-point lift for Lisa Murkowski, and it showed, I think, an 8-point dip for the support of Joe Miller, which is very reflective, I think, of his problems. A second poll came out later in the day, put out by Lisa Murkowski's Alaska Standing Together group, which oddly enough showed no undecideds. It showed substantial overrepresentation, I think 38% Republican sampling in that poll. And that poll was compared to no other poll that I could see in the documents.
Right,
so
there was no trending.
There's no trending, but the trend lines I've seen have generally said Lisa's pretty solidly, you know, in a line between 30 and 33 or 34. That it would, without dispute, Joe Miller has gone from a high after she got in of about 39% to somewhere in the 20s. And without a doubt, McAdams' campaign went from a low that would have been in the mid to high teens up until somewhere in the high 20s. So those seem to be the three trends that are out there right now.
Where that's going. I looked at that poll too, and the same day they sent out a flyer, Standing Together people, sent out a flyer with a picture of an enlisted service person in their gear, and that's completely, it's completely illegal. So, I have a hard time believing their polls, and it's too bad for the person who got on that picture because they could be in trouble.
Yeah.
Sadly. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you all, I'm sure, soon, if not Tuesday. If you're in Anchorage, come down to the Egan Center, and please check out shannonmoore.com, and we'll let you know where we're going to be election night, and hopefully we'll all be celebrating. And either way, we're all going to be Alaskans at the end of the day. Keep it in mind. All right, we'll be back next week with a wrap-up of More Up North.
That is like the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Dispatch, Tom Brennan, and Eric.